At least it doesn't sound as much like on hold music as it used to. Welcome, everybody, to hey, it's July 1st. It is now 22 days until the start of training camp because they announced it yesterday that July 23rd is the first day of camp. So, you know, it's here. It's on us. We only have a couple more weeks of trying to figure out what the hell to talk about before they actually start doing things. Bob, we were talking about this off the air just a second ago. This panic that people seem to have over the quarterback room for the Saints. It's insane. It really is, because I said this to you off the air. I posted this also on Twitter. You know, if social media existed in 1971 and the Saints draft Archie Manning, then they trade Billy Kilmer to the Washington Redskins. So all you have on the roster is Archie Manning and Ed Hargett. Okay, that's who the quarterbacks were in 1971. People asking for like Kenny Pickett and Jameis Winston or Joe Flacco or someone like that. It's almost like saying we need to trade for, if this is 1971, Terry Hanratty from the Pittsburgh Steelers, because Terry Bradshaw is obviously going to be the quarterback. So Terry Hanratty's got, you know, some starts under his belt. We should have him. He was a good player at Notre Dame. I just don't get it. I mean, what are you trying to do? Do you want to start a rookie quarterback? Do you want to do a rebuild? Or do you want to try and keep doing what we've been doing with veteran QBs and trying to win the division, trying to get back a playoff spot? I mean, what do you think? I mean,
in a nutshell, it's the desperation of trying to replace a legendary quarterback by rubbing on a genie bottle until you get one. Oh my God, we got to sign this guy or trade for this guy. Basically, anybody that's not in a Saints uniform, they want. We got to draft someone. But not that guy. They're not serious about winning because they drafted that guy. Chill. I mean, hell, if social media were as big as what it is now, back in the 2006 offseason, people would have been getting ready to jump off of a bridge. Oh my God, they signed Drew Brees. He can't even throw a football. He just had surgery. He got benched in San Diego. He sucks. This team isn't serious about winning. I could drop the mic right there. But I mean, in a nutshell, and whether you guys want to admit it or not, it's fact. But all the same people that want to trade for Kenny Pickett or are screaming this team isn't serious about winning because they didn't draft the quarterback you wanted them to draft, you would have been the same exact people back in 2006 saying what I just said about Drew Brees. And like you said off the air, Alan, it is the same people doing this over and over and over again. They need to have the keyboard taken away from them for our sanity's sake.
Well, and it's the national media too that's pushing this because there's obviously nothing to talk about right now. Miami had a big trade, which, speaking of teams that don't know what the hell they're doing, what are the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Miami Dolphins doing right now? I don't understand this. Prior to signing Aaron Rodgers, they were making all the moves like they're going to tank this season and start a rebuild with a new quarterback they were going to draft in the first round of 2026. Mike Tomlin's record of never having a losing season be damned. They wanted just to hit the reset button, shed some salary. I mean, they traded George Pickens, but at the same time, they go and trade for DK Metcalf, and now you brought in Aaron Rodgers. You traded Micah Fitzpatrick, and you brought in Jalen Ramsey. You paid your tight end, but because Arthur Smith's got to have his boy from Atlanta, you traded for a tight end from Miami, Smith. I don't know. I don't understand what they're doing. I don't understand what Miami's doing because Miami's coach is on the hot seat. Did trading Jalen Ramsey away and your best tight end away, make you a better team? Micah Fitzpatrick is the guy you got rid of. Now you brought him back. So what are they trying to do? These moves don't make any sense, and it's like everything like this in the league right now. It doesn't make sense what you're trying to do. You're either going to compete, because I said this about the Steelers. I'm like, did that close the gap between that trade they just did? Because they haven't paid TJ Watt yet either. Does that trade close the gap with the Ravens to win, and the Bengals, because I'm going to throw them in there too? Does that close the gap with those two teams that you can win that division, get in the playoffs, have you compete against the Buffaloes and the Kansas Cities? Miami, you're sharing a division with Buffalo. So you need to figure out how you're going to beat Buffalo. Did the move you just make allow you to beat Buffalo? I don't think they did. So, it's like they fall in love with names, and that's how it feels like some of these Saints rumors are. They're falling in love with a name. They want that name player because they were good at one time. Yep. So are we rebuilding? Or are we competing, to win the division? What are we trying to do here? And I'm satisfied because people have been talking about it now for the past 3 years since Dennis Allen got hired. Let's burn it all to the ground and rebuild. Now they're saying, I don't really want to rebuild. All I wanted to do was replace the quarterback that I hate with a guy I like, go get some other veteran players so we have some playmakers, and go out there and compete again. Because you still got Alvin Kamara, and you still got Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed and those guys. So, I mean, that's not what they want to do now. Go ahead, Bob.
I think, and I've already said this to several people this offseason before the Steelers signed Aaron Rodgers, but when it became apparent that Aaron Rodgers was going to be a Steeler, which I felt since February. Yeah. I kept telling people, I'm like, well, at least to me, it at least feels like the Saints have more of a direction than the Pittsburgh Steelers do right now. Mm-hmm. The Pittsburgh Steelers are stuck in that delusional outlook of what the Saints were, at least through Dennis Allen's first 2 years. We still believe that we're a contender. We just needed this player or that player, this veteran or that veteran. Because with the Saints, in New Orleans, certainly not Mickey Loomis is never going to admit, okay, we were wrong about the strategy outlook that we took before. So now we're doing a soft rebuild. And I call it that because, and you pointed this out, they have so many contracts that they have to get out from under. Mm-hmm. From kicking the cap down the road, something that a lot of you guys hated. The same people that hated that strategy are now pissed off because the Saints did not sign any big name veterans or did not try to trade for any big name veterans. Well, folks, that's because the Saints finally recognize the situation that they're in. That they are going to have to, rebuild through the draft or, a soft free agency approach until they get some cap room. while these veteran contracts expire or these guys retire, whatever the case may be. So at least to me, it feels like the Saints have more of a direction now than what they have for the last three or 4 years. The Steelers and the Dolphins. I mean, the Steelers for so many decades were such a well-run organization. Whether you agreed with the moves or not, you could never say the Steelers lacked a direction until now.
Yeah.
Because I'm like you, I don't know what the hell they're doing. They say they want to rid themselves of problem children, by getting rid of Deontay, and Minka was apparently unhappy with his contract, and Juju Smith-Schuster, and you do that by bringing in guys like George Pickens, and George Pickens is a problem, so we're going to trade him. But in the process, you bring in DK Metcalf and Jalen Ramsey, who has not stayed any more than 2.5 years at any team that he's been, because he's worn out his welcome. So let's do that. Let's replace Antonio Brown with the latest psychopath out there. Just because and speaking of problem children, Aaron Rodgers again, mic drop. Just because Mike Tomlin, and I love Mike Tomlin, I do. I would love for him to be my coach. And frankly, in my view, no coach needs a fresher start than Mike Tomlin. But Mike Tomlin's ego, just like Sean Payton's ego at the end, is allowing him to forcing him to make his decisions. Well, I can fix this player. I could squeeze more life out of that player. I can trade for that player and get him on the right path. People talk about the New Orleans Saints potentially being owning a top 3, top 5 draft pick. It would not surprise me if the Pittsburgh Steelers were a double-digit loss team, in the top 5 or 10 of the draft at this time next spring.
Yeah, and I don't want people to think this is becoming a Steelers chat or anything like that. It's just that the Steelers are doing some of the kind of moves that I'm reading Saints fans want the Saints to do. And, it is a truism that almost every team, because of the way parity is set up in the league, almost every team is really a super quarterback away from suddenly becoming a contender. I get that thinking, because the Commanders have been a disaster for I don't know how long. Jaden Daniels shows up over there, and now they're in the playoffs and made it to the NFC Championship game. Detroit has been bad for decades. And I'm not talking like 30 years. I'm talking like 60 years, 70 years. They've been bad. Even squandering Hall of Fame careers like Barry Sanders, Megatron, those kind of players. So I understand the idea that once you get some of the right people in place, you can go on a run. But sometimes it's like you were pointing out with Jalen Ramsey. Some of these guys are just mercenaries. They just go from team to team to team to get the money. And they're going to play. They're going to fulfill their contract, but they're going for money. So that's their first love. I always felt Clowney was a good example of a mercenary kind of player.
100%.
Except Clowney doesn't even produce. He just comes and takes the check. But I mean, it's so I don't want that anymore. I want, the Saints to build through the draft, save their draft picks, acquire more draft picks, and build this team through the draft. So with that in mind, if I were to ask you to name the most important players, the players that matter on the Saints roster right now, the guys that you're going to have to see something out of this year to say, okay, these are the kind of guys we're going to build this team around. Because obviously the Cam Jordans, the Taysom Hills, even the Alvin Kamaras, those guys are at the back end of their careers now. So we're looking at young players who's going to make up that new core. And I know it's not that many of them, but there are a few that you're going to have to see something out of. I mean, to me, the guy who tops the list obviously is Tyler Shuck, because you spent a draft pick on him. You don't have to do it again next year, but that's the first guy that you want to see something out of. But who else would you put on that list?
Yeah, I think I think Shuck's the easy answer, like you said.
Yeah.
Because you need, he doesn't necessarily have to have a Jaden Daniels type of year, but he does have to show that you finally have a long term answer at the position.
Yes.
But besides that, there's a few that really jump out. Speaking of rookies, Calvin Banks Jr.
Mm-hmm.
You brought in Calvin Banks to team up with Talise Fuaga. Fuaga, I think, looked like a potential perennial All Pro last year. If Banks is that same kind of player, then you have potentially an elite pair of tackles to build your offensive line around for the foreseeable future. So I think it's key, just as key that Calvin Banks has a big rookie year as much as Tyler Shuck. But as far as guys that are already on the roster, Chase Young. I mean, you signed him to a 3-year contract.
Yeah.
It still boggles my mind why, but. They did it because they feel that he's the defensive centerpiece to build around. As much as me or anybody else may disagree with that, that's the way they feel, and they paid him to do exactly that. He's still a young guy. He's still a young guy.
Mm-hmm.
So you hope the light turns on for him, and if it does turn on for him this year, the Saints look like geniuses, because now all of a sudden, all that money that they paid him, it looks like a relative bargain to get. If he turns into suddenly an elite defensive player, you have him under contract for 3 years at a pretty reasonable rate as far as elite defense, top tier defensive talent goes. And on speaking of top tier and money, Chris Olave. You just picked up Chris Olave's 5th-year option, so that gives you basically a year. That delays your decision on Chris Olave by a year. I think he is talented as heck, but he has to prove that he could stay on the field and be that guy. As many plays as Chris Olave has made, he's also never really solidified himself as the guy to go to. He's not been a Michael Thomas. He's not been a Marcus Colston, not been a Jimmy Graham, not been that guy that the defenses go in week after week saying, we have to figure out, we know we're not going to stop this guy, but we have to figure out a way to contain him. Otherwise we don't win. Chris Olave needs to take that next step. And if he doesn't, then there's no reason for the Saints to even entertain a contract renegotiation with him. And I'll jump back to the defensive side. Kool-Aid McKinstry. You let Paulson Adebo walk out the door because you decided to sign Chase Young, essentially. Mm-hmm. You traded Marshawn Lattimore, which in hindsight looks like a pretty good deal. Yeah. But in the process, you've weakened your cornerback room. Well, if Kool-Aid McKinstry can expand and develop from what we saw as a rookie, and I thought he was pretty good as a rookie, if he could take that next step forward, then you've kind of, you still need someone to go opposite him. That's a different conversation, one that we've had several times already. But if you have a top tier cornerback, we've already seen what that can do for a defense. We've seen it in New Orleans firsthand when Marshawn Lattimore arrived in 2017. The fact that you have a player like Marshawn Lattimore in that secondary, that can make plays, that can basically silence whoever he is guarding. If Kool-Aid McKinstry can be that guy, then all of a sudden the pass rush looks better. The safeties can roam free a little bit and are free to make big plays and things like that. So not a lot of people. People are talking about Olave, Chase Young as guys to build around. Not as many people are talking about Kool-Aid McKinstry, but I believe he is just as important as the other guys that I mentioned.
Yeah, and the other names I'm throwing that list is Brian Brzee. Mm-hmm. You want to see where he goes now. Where does he fit in this defense? I think he can make an impact, and Cam Jordan kind of hinted about this, but he can make an impact as a 2-gap defensive lineman, defensive end. Because he said one of his problems was that he was facing a lot of double teams because he was getting that quick burst off the ball, getting inside. If he can do that and be like a Wayne Martin kind of player, that's a heck of a ceiling. And
Oh,
that
yeah.
that would be a hell of a for a first round pick too. I mean, I know you expect a lot out of a first round pick, but for for the defense to have, say, a Chase Young on one side and and as rushing as an outside linebacker, and have Brian Brzee on the other side, pushing inside the pocket, getting in that B gap, getting to the quarterback, and playing the run well, that's a huge step forward.
Yeah.
Not just Wayne Martin, but Frank Warren did that well. Jim Wilkes, before he got moved to nose tackle, did that well. Um, you know, Bruce Clark, all the players that you can think of in Saints history have done that remarkably well, and you would hope you can get that kind of production out of Brian Brzee. And the other guy is Alontae Taylor. We kind of have to figure out where he really, really fits in. It seems that they really like him at the nickel, which I do too, playing inside. He's a good blitzer inside. I see a lot of, Marcus, not Marcus, safety was with Roman Harper. He just retired.
Oh, Malcolm Jenkins.
Malcolm Jenkins, thank you.
Maybe a Malcolm Jenkins that can cover. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm saying, I see a lot of Malcolm Jenkins in him. In other words, that, as he starts to slow down, as he gets older and he can't cover as well anymore, he could move him to safety and be that, in the box safety, coming off the edge safety, because he's a really good blitzer. He showed that a lot early in the season when the cornerbacks were healthy and they were able to use him a lot differently. But yeah, I see a good ceiling for him. So yeah, those are some of the guys. And then I don't want to put him on the list yet, but it is important that he does take a step forward if they're going to keep him at guard. But Trevor Penning, you have to make a decision on Trevor Penning. I would like for him to become like how Jim Dombrowski was. And yes. Jim Dombrowski had that career where he played tackle, left and right tackle, moved him to guard, and became a really, really good guard. He was a first-round pick, but people weren't really griping about that, him playing guard, because he was actually doing a very solid job. Dombrowski and Penning have a lot in common, because Dombrowski had a temper. If there was going to be a fight, Dombrowski was going to be in the middle of it.
Yeah, he was.
So, I mean, that's the guy that didn't take any crap from anybody. So, I mean, to me, those are the most important guys that I think this core needs to build around, and we need to see development. I mean, throw Rashid Shaheed in there too.
Yeah.
Let's see if Rashid Shaheed can do that Devery Henderson leap and become a better route runner to make his speed even more lethal. I thought he needed more coaching these past couple of seasons. Some of these interceptions, some of the problems that Derek Carr had. He called out Chris Olave, but Rashid Shaheed really ran the wrong routes a bunch of times too.
Yeah.
More focused and better production out of that. So I think those are the key guys.
Well, what I'd like to see out of Rashid is I'd like to see more usage the way the 49ers use Deebo Samuel more. More wide receiver screens, more jet sweeps, even some even some backfield snaps, because he is so electric in the open field. I mean, everybody knows how fast he is, but watch him on his punt returns. He has got elite elusiveness as well. Use that. Don't just run him on jet sweeps. Yeah, we know he can outrun defensive backs, pretty much anybody that you put up against him. But that limits his productiveness too, because you are you're not using him to his full capabilities. I do agree with you. That I'd like to see more consistent route running from him. Having covered some games, and I know you attend a few a year. He has the ability. Every now and then, you'll see him on shorter intermediate routes. He may not get the ball, but he'll get separation. And just his speed itself, forces defensive backs to give him that cushion. So, he can make plays underneath. You just got to get him the ball. And as far as Penning goes, Penning is going to have to show quickly, that he can make the adjustment at guard, because the Saints did not pick up his fifth-year option. So he'll be a free agent at the end of this year. Now, that doesn't automatically mean that New Orleans will lose him. If you recall, folks, they didn't pick up Cesar Ruiz's fifth-year option, and Ruiz played very well, in that fourth year, where he would have been a free agent at the end of the year, and the Saints signed him before midseason. You could see that same kind of thing develop with Penning, and if he's playing well, you certainly hope that it does. But that's just it. Penning is going to have to play well, consistently well, at a new position from the very start.
And that's the advantage of Derek Carr retiring and them getting that $30 million back. Now, because you had to commit to Derek Carr before you could pick up options, you had to make the decision: am I going to pick up Olave's option? Am I going to pick up Penning's option? Because you now have that money, you now have time to think about it and make the effort, if he is playing well, to go ahead and extend him, or let him walk because he's not playing well. You need to upgrade from it. So, so the Saints cabinet is not bare. The cupboard is not bare. They do have some talented players. It's just going to be a question of this coaching staff figuring out the best place to put these guys, and these guys having to grow up and show they can be the next generation, the next group of guys to step forward. Because what have we been saying since, 2021? The problem has always been that the Saints draft picks are just not panning out. They had to keep extending these older guys because there's no young guys coming up. So that was the point of this tonight's show, is to talk about who are the guys that we need to step forward. And you notice we didn't bring up any of the guys that you and I have put on the bubble, because you don't know what these guys are going to be. I mean, Kendre Miller, most talented running back this side of Alvin Kamara, but I couldn't tell you to count on him. I don't know, if he's got the talent, but those other guys, I've seen stuff out of them. I've seen Brazil do a lot. Obviously, we've seen Olave. We've seen Shaheed do things for us. Miller, we haven't seen anything, not anything consistent. Then, the guy that they were supposed to redesign the whole defense, maybe to give him a shot to play, the defensive, who's going to be now an outside pass rusher from Notre Dame, he hasn't done anything.
Nope.
So, if you're going to say, okay, Isaiah Foskey, we're going to go ahead and put him in there as a guy. No, you can't. You really can't. And we've had too many Isaiah Foskeys, too many Kendre Millers come through. Those are the guys that we need to either, they're the bubble guys. They're the guys that have to put up or shut up. But those are the guys you need to stop drafting, and you need to start drafting more players who are going to become the core of your team. And that's the key to me. It's July 1st today. The story was, after July 1st, that's when Asante Samuel Jr. May make his decision, may be healthy enough to practice. Have you heard anything about Asante Samuel Jr. since he last visited the Saints?
No, I have not heard anything other than some mumblings that other teams might have interest. Baltimore Ravens, I've heard, might have some interest, along with some other teams. But I've not heard Asante Samuel's side whatsoever, how his rehab is going. And, presumably that's what the Saints were waiting on. To see how his rehab was coming, to find out when he could get onto the field, and if it was going to be before the end of preseason or at least early into the regular season, then a lot of us assumed that the Saints would pull the trigger and try to bring him in. I still think that will be the case if Asante Samuel's rehab is going well, but we haven't heard anything. So, I mean, the next couple of weeks, like you said, July 23rd, is the first official day of training camp.
Yeah.
If Asante Samuel is not in uniform by then for the Saints, he is not going to be in uniform this season for the Saints.
Yeah. I mean, we're looking at 3 weeks from tomorrow is the 23rd. So, yeah, I would expect, if we're going to hear anything from Asante Samuel, it's going to be within the next week or so. He'll at least check in. I just can't see the Saints waiting for training camp to start and then to think about bringing him in. I think that would be a mistake because, he may know Brandon Staley's defense, but he needs to become acclimated with the rest of his team. He needs to be fighting for a starting job. That's just tough, to have him just walk in and, guys who are out there competing, the Rico Paytons, the Isaac Giddams and stuff, and this guy just comes off the street and, what do you mean? He gets my job. I've been out here since OTAs competing for this job, and you're just going to give it to a guy off the street? That's not right. So, I agree with you on that. And it'd be interesting to see. I think the Ravens are kind of set now at corner when they picked up Jair Alexander from the Packers.
Yeah,
so they're probably out of that market. Miami might be at a cornerback.
Well, and I was going to bring that up. Miami, the Packers, after letting Alexander go, they need a cornerback. And Green Bay runs a very similar type of system to what we think Brandon Staley is going to run. So they're going to be suitors for Asante Samuel if he's healthy. And like you said, even if Asante can't practice right away, even if it's going to be a couple weeks into training camp, you still have to get him in there within the first day or two. So that way these other guys don't feel like you're bringing in somebody off of the street because you think I am garbage. Plus Asante's got to sit there in meetings and at least pick up the terminology and the way the defensive play callers are going to think.
Right. Likewise, Tyler Shuck was at the Manning Passing Academy this past week. Said some great things. We'll talk about the St. Brown interview in a minute, but he still has not signed his contract. He is still looking for that guaranteed money.
Did you know that 29 of the 32 second-round picks are still unsigned? That is unreal to me.
Yes. That's where I was going with this. A lot of them are saying that pick number 40 is the key to it all. That as soon as he gets the agreed to amount of guaranteed money, now the rest of the players that are below him can say, okay, if he got, let's use 40 again. Let's say he got 40 million guaranteed. Okay. I know he's not going to, but let's just say he gets 40 million guaranteed. Then pick 41 goes, okay, that means I get 38 million guaranteed. And, it goes down from there. And that'll kick in all those deals. So I'm not saying Shuck, you're holding up, but Shuck, you're holding it up. So when is the panic date?
July 23rd. Because I mean, you're not going to get anything done, field work wise with Tyler Shuck between July 2nd and July 22nd. you've already gotten your look at him, through OTAs and and limited and mini camps, despite because he signed that waiver, and thank God that he did.
Oh, yeah.
But you still have to have him in there on day one, and I believe that Shuck actually has the negotiating power over the Saints in this instance, because if I'm him, I'm saying, look, yeah, I know I'm a second round pick, but you're the one that identified me. You had the opportunity to trade up for Jackson Dart. You didn't, because you wanted me. You had the opportunity to draft Shador Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard, whoever. You didn't. You drafted me. You lost your veteran quarterback. Yeah, I know I'm going to be competing with Spencer Rattler, but he's a day 3 pick from a previous regime. Again, you guys wanted me. So I think that Shuck has the negotiating power here.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%, because Shuck can act like I'm a first round pick and you're going to pay me like one. He's in that position. Now, the collective bargaining agreement for the rookie salary cap is pretty solid. He knows about how much his contract is going to be worth. It's just the guaranteed money. How much money are you willing to fork over? Guaranteed. And to me, like you said, you picked me. Yeah, you decided that I'm going to be your starter. You didn't bring in a veteran quarterback. You didn't bring in. You lost Carr, but you didn't prepare by bringing in somebody else to compete with Carr. You got me competing with Spencer Rattler. We know what Rattler is. He's not another high draft pick I got to compete against. He's a guy that you looked at and decided he wasn't enough. You need something else. So, yeah, I totally get that. And I agree. I think he needs to be here on day one. He is saying all the right things. He is doing all the right things. He gets on the St. Brown podcast, which thankfully I don't watch that.
No.
Last year when Equimus St. Brown, is that how you say his first name?
Yeah, sure. I call him Equifax Credit Report St. Brown, but
there you go. Anyway, when he was on the Saints team and his brother Amon-Ra was over there talking shit about, who cares about the Saints? Who's looking at the Saints? And that kind of stuff. I'm like, you're a freaking Detroit Lion. Nobody gave a damn about the Detroit Lions 2 years ago. Now you're the top-notch team. I don't think so, Tim. You're competing with the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Eagles right now are the top-notch team. That window, I think, is closing pretty quickly for your team. As young as you guys are, and as good as you guys are, you're going to have to start paying people for Detroit. Already, you can hear it I heard it in the head coach Dan Campbell's voice, after the playoff loss this past year. He felt like the window was starting to close, that this was one of their last shots to make it to at least to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That window closes awfully fast, and it's hard to keep that much talent together. Don't know what the Vikings are going to be like. Don't know what the Packers are going to be like, but those are your top two competition. I know the Bears always get hyped up, but believe it when I see it.
Right.
They're still the Bears. They're the Jets of the NFC right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're losing coaches. Speaking of, the Bears, they've lost their offensive coordinator. So, there's some question marks about Detroit. But the thing that really shook me up just made me laugh. What is one of the things New Orleans is known for? Open containers of alcohol and food. Okay?
Parties and food, yes.
Yeah. So you go on the show and you tell Tyler Shuck, I thought the food was pretty bland, basic, whatever. It's like, compared to what? And Shuck had a great answer, a very New Orleanian answer. Maybe that's why you're not on the Saints anymore, because you didn't like the food. You didn't think much of the food. I mean, you gotta love it. You really do.
Yeah.
he says all the right things. It's like he took the Derek Carr playbook and went full George Costanza. I'm going to do the opposite of whatever Derek Carr did. Um, I really like this kid. That's why I want him to succeed, because I really like the things he says and the way he carries himself.
Yeah, I love it too. And Brendan Boylan, for those that don't know, my co-host on the Bayou Blitz. Shameless plug, going live tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central Time.
There you go.
Tour most of the end of last season and certainly into this off season, Brendan would occasionally jump up on the podium and tout himself as that he should be Derek Carr's PR man. Because everything that Derek Carr said or did, Brendan would counter with what he should have said or did. And Brendan alluded to this, to Shuck's, some of the things that Tyler Shuck has been saying last week. And he said, now see, Tyler Shuck is taking the page out of the we should have copyrighted it for Brendan, but he's taking the pages out of the Brendan Boylan PR playbook. And like you said, Alan, he's saying and doing all the right things to sort of ingrain himself into New Orleans society. And I mean, hell, if this kid plays well fairly early on, you could see him being a fan favorite. All those idiots that were saying you shouldn't have drafted this guy. He's too old. He's too injury prone. He's too this. He's too that. He just sucks. They're going to be the first ones to jump on the prime bandwagon. So I hope I'm too busy to keep receipts and keep screenshots, but I hope some of you out there are, because I'll be sitting on eating my popcorn on social media, watching the back and forth. What happened to all those clips of you saying Shuck was this and wasn't this? So yeah, like you, Alan. He seems like an entertaining young man. I've already said several times I loved his game, in college, especially the last couple of years when he was able to stay healthy. The age doesn't concern me at all. 25 old. I saw Jordy Hallberg and I were joking about this morning. You and I would sell our souls to be called old at 25. And. Yeah. Look at it this way, folks. I mean, most quarterbacks are playing pretty well into their mid 30s now. You have a handful that are playing well into their late 30s. So if you're able to get 10 years would be Tyler Shuck at 35. If you're able to get 10 or 12 years of very good quarterback play from him, there's only one quarterback in New Orleans Saints in the 58 years of New Orleans Saints history that was able to play well for the team after 8, 10, 12 years. And we all know who he is, and that's who Tyler Shuck is essentially trying to replace. So if you're going to get 10, you tell me you're going to get 10 years out of Tyler Shuck, I am going to take that any day of the week. I don't care how old he is.
Absolutely. Because, my thing has been always, like he went to the Manning Passing Academy. He's a graduate of the Manning Passing Academy. So the Mannings know him very well. My wife loved him as soon as she saw the dog and on draft day. When he got drafted, he and his wife are hugging, and that lab is like right in the middle of him, jumping up and down with him. She's like, that's it. I like it because he's got a dog like that. But yeah, I mean, the big thing to me is, I want to see how Shuck looks. Not in September and October. And we've said this plenty of times. The first month of this schedule is brutal. Mm-hmm. You're playing 4 good teams. At best, you'll probably be 1-3 out of it. It's going to be tough facing those teams early. But I want to see how this team looks in November, especially close to Thanksgiving, and December. if Shuck looks like a better quarterback than he did in September and October before Halloween, that's a good thing. Not just because they're playing easier teams, but because he's maturing, he's showing development, he's learning, because it's going to be, the numbers I keep hearing get thrown around would be a solid year. I know Calvin put up, 4,800 yards and 30 TDs. I'd love to get that out of him, but, realistically, I'm thinking it's going to be 3,200 yards, maybe 3,500 yards, about 20 to 25 TDs, probably about 15 to 17 interceptions, though, because you're going to make those mistakes.
And he was a gunslinger in college, so he does throw them to the other team.
As long as they're not backbreaking ones, as long as they're not, ones that just show, like, okay, if you throw early in the year, you throw a couple of bad pick sixes or something like that, that's fine. But again, if we're getting around December and you're still struggling to throw the out route, you're throwing too many picks on the out route.
You can't read a defense.
Yeah, you're staring stuff down. That's when it gets tough. That's when you're like, this guy just isn't going to get it. And people wonder why I don't like Jameis Winston. That was part of it, because I saw Jameis Winston throwing the same stupid interceptions in year 5 that he was doing in year 1 as a rookie. The out route was his killer. He would put the ball on the inside shoulder instead of the outside shoulder, away from the defensive back, where it's just between the receiver and the sideline. That's where the ball needs to be. You throw it on the inside shoulder where the defensive back is breaking on the ball, that's a pick six. He's just waiting for that ball to come in. And he would do this time and time again. So that was one of those problems that would bother me. One of the things that's going to drive fans crazy, and they will probably hear comparisons to Patrick Mahomes too, is he likes to throw from all kinds of angles. He likes to throw it sidearm. He likes to do a Dan Quisenberry kind of thing. If you guys don't remember who Dan Quisenberry was, he threw this underarm kind of ball that would start real low and come up. I mean, all kinds of bizarre angles with the ball. He gets to his receiver, though. So as long as those completions happen, I'll be happy. I'll be happy. Yeah. Yeah, I think they'll have a few of those.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to run, but I think it's going to be curtailed. I think the first couple of hits he takes, he's going to say, I'm not going to run anymore. Or if he does run to the sideline, get out of bounds. There's nothing wrong with getting out of bounds. I'm excited to see him. I'm hoping he starts week 1.
Yeah.
I think he will be a fan favorite, especially if he leads to comeback wins or just exciting ball games, which is what the fans have been craving. The big complaint I heard about Dennis Allen was that he was boring. The offense was boring. The team was boring. The losses were boring.
Predictable.
Yes.
I mean, you could sit there and say exactly how the rest of the game was going to go after the first 3 drives, almost every single week. And like you said, I think Saints fans, I mean, we all want to win. At the end of the day, and I will take a boring loss or a boring win over an exciting loss for sure. But I think that the realistic portion of the fan base, as small as what that seems sometimes, I think that they accept exactly what you're saying. That if the Saints can hang tough, be competitive, play exciting football early on, and then show that they've progressed, show that they've developed by November and December, where they're, regardless of where they are in the standings, where they're a tough out by the end of the year. I think that that's going to be acceptable to the realistic portion of this fan base.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just want to see, You want to be able to come back at a game and say, you know what, I really, really liked. Yeah, we lost because the defense couldn't stop the run, or we made this mistake or that mistake. But you want to say, man, that drive looked really, really good, or man, when the pressure was on, he got points on the board. He took the team down the field and scored. The big bugaboo about Carl was that he struggled in the red zone. If he does, if Chuck doesn't have those kind of labels where struggle in the red zone, throws in a lot of interceptions, gets to be predictable, gets shook up by the pass rush, that kind of thing. As long as you don't see those kind of things, I think fans will be more patient watching his development, because the expectations are pretty low this year. And that's kind of what you want, with a rebuilding team. The expectations in 2006 were extremely low. Coming off of a Katrina year, new coach, don't know who's good and who's not. 2000, same way. We're trying to salvage something out of the rubble that Mike Ditka left. 1986, when Jim Mora came in, oh my God, first new coach this new owner is hired, came from the USFL. Can he compete in the NFL? So expectations are always low on these things. When you're coming off a successful season, and I think that's part of what doomed Dennis Allen. You came off of basically 4 NFC South titles. Probably could have got a 5th one if injuries don't take place. Sean Payton leaves, your most successful coach in history. Now you're going to have to try and show you're not the same guy who coached the Raiders to only 9 wins or 8 wins, whatever the hell it was in 3 years. You got to be able to make this team a winner, and he couldn't do it. He had a couple winning seasons, but the team wasn't a winning team. You didn't get the feeling this was a good team. So those expectations were a lot higher that you were going to fix this team and get them back over the hump. Especially because Tom Brady was over there in Tampa and won a Super Bowl with Tampa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Calvin. I think Chuck is going to be good. I think he's going to be all right. He's got a good coach. That's the other question we have is what kind of coach is this new coach, Moore going to be? This is his first time as a head coach, so there's no expectations about this. People feel like he was kind of the last option of possible coaches you could get because of all the other coaches getting jobs first. So yeah, there's a lot of questions behind that as well. The last thing I want to go into this evening, we were going to talk about some of the best offensive players in Saints history. We've talked about offensive line. We talked about wide receivers, I think, already. I don't remember.
I don't remember.
Yeah, we can go back over the receivers.
Yeah, offensive line we definitely covered.
Yes, and we don't need to talk about quarterbacks. I mean, come on.
No,
and then, if you're nostalgic like me, Archie Manning, if you grew up, in the Aaron Brooks era, it's Aaron Brooks. If you grew up with Bobby Hebert, it's Bobby Hebert. That's the names after that. It's like kickers, Morton Anderson and Tommy Barnhart, Morton Anderson and Thomas Morstead. That's it. That's the list. So running backs, though, because like the offensive line, you've had a lot of good running backs that have come through this organization. And it starts with Chuck Muncie and Tony Galbraith. But after that, you've got guys like George Rogers, Dalton Hilliard, Reuben Mays, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, Deuce McAllister, Ricky Williams. If you were to put together, say, the top 3 or 4 running backs, who would those guys be?
In this order: Kamara, Ingram, Deuce, Muncie.
Wow, interesting.
And to me, I as many talented running backs, and I love Reuben Mays. George Rogers was a beast. Dalton Hilliard was amazing. Tony Galbraith was amazing. Tony Galbraith was Alvin Kamara before Alvin Kamara. And even Ricky Williams, expectations aside, Ricky Williams put up some pretty damn good numbers for awful teams.
There's only one running back in Saints history that's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. If memory serves, I don't think Ingram may have done it in 2016, 2017. I don't remember.
He did, yeah.
Okay, but one guy was the first to get back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and that was Ricky Williams in 2000, 2001. But yeah, there's a lot of talented guys in there.
Yeah, but they all come with what ifs. What if Reuben Mays and Dalton Hilliard's knees stayed intact? You could say the same thing about Deuce. What if Tony Galbraith wasn't given away for pennies during that 1981 fire sale? What Chuck Muncie and the cocaine? Same thing. That's basically why. Kamara I put first, despite the fact he hasn't had 1,000-yard season, because I think his first 4 years in the league were just outstanding. I think he was underrated in NFL circles then. But him and Kamara and Ingram, I'm not putting them up there because of recency bias. I usually yell at people for doing that. I put them up there because, unlike Deuce, Muncie, Mays, Rogers, Hilliard, Kamara and Ingram have had longevity. That's why they're my top two. Deuce is a close third. Again, if Deuce's knees could have held together, he'd be at the top of the list. And at Muncie, I know Muncie's issues, but the fact that man is not even in the Saints Hall of Fame just boggles my mind. I mean, did the organization hate him that much? Because folks, younger fans especially, go look, and Alan posts them all the time. Go look at some Saints highlights of those offenses with Chuck Muncie and Tony Galbraith. But Chuck Muncie was an absolute monster, nearly unstoppable. That's why he's my fourth back.
The thing about Muncie is Archie Manning said this one time. He would spend the week apparently doing cocaine or whatever. Archie said, I don't know what he did all week, because he had to tell him to play when they broke the huddle. He had to go and turn and look at him and point where you're going to go, what you got to do. And he still rushed for 1,000 yards in 1979. He would miss flights. He missed, he showed up one game, middle of the second quarter, that kind of stuff.
Your sound suddenly cut out, Alan. Alan, I don't know if it's me or it's you, but your sound completely cut out.
All right, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, now you're back on. I didn't know whether it was you or me, but I couldn't hear you.
It could have been me. I might have touched the wire here, and it knocked it out. I don't know where. Okay, I don't know where it dropped off, but basically, I was saying that Muncie scored 19 touchdowns in 1981, and Dalton Hilliard scored 18 in 89. And Muncie was playing with, Charlie Joyner, Wes Chandler was there, Kellen Winslow, that was a pass first offense, and he
Mhm.
still was able to do what he did in 1981. But again, the cocaine problem. So that's why a lot of fans probably don't think much of him. You got a lot of good with Muncie, but you also got a lot of bad.
Yep.
He carried that ball like a loaf of bread, so he would hold it away from his body. He fumbled a lot, that kind of thing. Um, but basically, I get it. It's hard for me to put him in the top four now. I agree with what Bob's and with your list, Bob, and also what Calvin said. Kamara, Ingram, and Deuce. Those are my top three. The fourth guy I probably would put in there, if not Muncie, because Muncie's my personal favorite. And, I got Reggie Bush's number on today. We didn't even mention Reggie Bush,
Yeah,
but
Bush rounds out my top 10, but yeah,
yeah, you know, we didn't mention Darren Sproles. Darren Sproles is another one.
I'll take
I
Pierre
was
Thomas over him every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Thank you.
Pierre Thomas. My God, I was watching the 2011 season, and the Saints ran four screen passes in what game was I watching? Sunday. The Vikings game. The Vikings game where we hung 45 points on them. They ran four screen passes with Pierre Thomas. He picked up on average 10 yards on every screen pass. It was just amazing. Maybe third and 15. We're going to run a screen to Pierre Thomas. He picks up 17 yards, and he fell forward for the final two. He was just. I should say, there's a Pierre Thomas play. There's a Pierre Thomas play. I mean, he scored a touchdown one of those screens. So yeah, there's a lot of talented running backs, but if I'm picking my top four, God, it's tough because I want to put. I'm gonna put. I love Muncie, but I'm probably putting Dalton Hilliard in this one. Um, Again, like Deuce, his knees gave out. He probably shouldn't have taken as many touches as he did.
Hmm.
Because he was a little guy, like 5'8", but his legs were like tree trunks. They
Yeah.
really were, and that's why the knee injuries so crippled him. Because he just didn't have the power. He had this power in his lower base. You try and tackle him, he's just running through you.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's like taking Darren Sproles' body, but giving him Earl Campbell's legs. Earl Campbell sized legs. And that's what Dalton Hilliard was like to watch. And it's funny because they drafted him in the second round. He's the highest LSU player we've ever drafted.
Uh-huh.
They drafted him in the second round with the idea that we're going to go ahead and make him the feature running back. Ruben Mays takes the job from him, but Dalton Hilliard got it back by 88, 89. That's when the injuries, the Achilles injuries and so forth, start affecting Ruben Mays. And yeah, I really, really, that's probably my top four. And
Yeah,
it's tough
I
because.
mean, I want to put Pierre Thomas at
Mhm.
four because he's my favorite. But I was pretty quick when I spit out Muncie at four. But I mean, I could easily be convinced to put Ruben Mays there, Dalton Hilliard
Oh
there,
yeah,
George Rogers there. To me, they're all interchangeable. But that's the frustrating part because they're all interchangeable because of the what if factor. Uh, you know, uh, and just so frustrating. What Saints history could have been so much different if a couple of these what ifs could, if Rodgers or Muncie could have stayed clean for even a year or two.
yeah,
If Mays or Hilliard's legs would have held up for even a year or two, Saints history would have been so much different. Jim Morris teams win a Super Bowl if Dalton Hilliard or Ruben Mays are able to stay healthy. Period. End of
absolutely.
story.
Absolutely. We didn't mention Ironhead Hayward. Ironhead Hayward's another one. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um,
but yeah, George Rogers. Yeah, we didn't talk about him at all. But George Rogers, my God, the problem that happened with Rogers is basically, aside from the cocaine, um, Bum Phillips ran him like Earl Campbell. He's not Earl Campbell.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Rogers had trouble staying healthy, and ironically, Rogers goes to the Washington Redskins in 1985. He leads them in rushing because he's the guy that replaces John Riggins.
Mm-hmm.
Gets into the Super Bowl in '87, but he gets hurt in the playoff run. Timmy Smith takes over. So what could have been George Rogers' feature. This is who you are. You won the Heisman in 1980 at Georgia, not Georgia, South Carolina. Excuse me, South Carolina, and then you're going to end your career as a Super Bowl winning running back, having the biggest game in Super Bowl history. But you get hurt, and they put Timmy Smith in there, and Timmy Smith's
Mm-hmm.
the one that does it. It's really a shame. And of course, what happened the year before? We talked about Tony Galbraith. Tony Galbraith won a Super Bowl with the Giants as a backup third down running back.
Yep.
It's funny. It's funny how that worked out. But yeah, I Thunder and Lightning, Muncie and Galbraith. It never they never could put it together. They didn't have the offensive line they needed. They really needed offensive tackles. They had some good guys inside, but they really needed some good tackles.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you. They had J.T. Thomas was one of the tackles, and I don't remember who the other guy was. It would vary. Dave LaFari sometimes. It would be people like that. But I saw J.T. Thomas get out ahead of Tony Galbraith. He was so freaking slow. Tony Galbraith just like ran past him or he did some kind of lunge block, completely whiffs on a cornerback, and a cornerback brings down Tony Galbraith. So he could have got some big yardage. It was that kind of stuff. It was just frustrating because Archie compared him to Chuck Foreman. He thought Galbraith played a lot like Chuck Foreman with his ability to catch the ball, his elusiveness. If you guys can go find it, it's actually a pretty good game. Saints versus 49ers in San Francisco in Candlestick in 1979. Tony Galbraith has this run where he gets a pass, he catches it on one side of the field, makes two moves, cuts completely across the field, outruns the 49ers, and this is Bill Walsh's team, outruns the 49ers defense all the way to about the 10-yard line. They catch him from behind. But he must have run about 60 yards across the field. And John Madden, that's one of his earliest games. He had just started with CBS. They hadn't put him with Pat Summerall yet. He is with, I think he's with Gary Bender. I'm not sure who the other announcer was, but Madden's very subdued. But Madden, you can see the personality starting to come out that would later dominate the 1980s NFL coverage, the Madden that we all know. I think his first whap is in that game where he says, he hits the hole and whap, he goes this way. And, but yeah, it's a fun game to watch if y'all get a chance to watch it. But you see the talent, but then you see some of the frustrations of that 79 Saints team. Okay, Bob. We'll talk about receivers next week because it's already over an hour. Yeah, we'll go into receivers, and then that's pretty much. I guess tight ends will be the other one. Receivers and tight ends. We'll take care of those two at the same time.
Tight ends are easy. Jimmy Graham, Henry Childs, and let's try to fill out a top 5.
Okay. Yeah, Obie Brenner,
Yeah.
But we'll bring out some old names on that one too. So Bayou Blitz tomorrow night. What do you have going on for the Bayou Blitz?
One of the things that we're going to talk about is who's going to be under the bigger microscope. And, we kind of hinted at it tonight. Obviously Tyler Shuck, or is it Kellen Moore? Tyler Shuck is replacing Derek Carr, who replaced Drew Brees. Yeah, I know Jameis Winston, but Derek Carr was basically handpicked to replace Drew Brees. Or is it Kellen Moore replacing Dennis Allen, who replaced Sean Payton? who has bigger shoes to fill? Who's going to be under the bigger microscope? That's good. I'm so sick of talking about quarterbacks, but I feel like that's going to be a fun debate.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to talk about like you and I talked tonight, about the young guys that are expected to step up and and make up this young core. What the other big question burning is, what veterans are going to have the biggest decline? Cam, Demario, Tyrann Mathieu, Eric McCoy, guys like that. What kind of decline can we expect from these guys? And if it happens, how much is it going to negatively affect the Saints season? I think it's going to be another fun topic.
I'm going to go out on a limb. This is probably me just wishful thinking, but I think Cam, now that he doesn't have that idiot Grantham as his defensive line coach, I think Cam is going to have a better season than we've seen the past couple of years.
I do too. As long as a couple of these other edge guys can step up, or defensive linemen can step up. If Cam, and I said this last year, if they can limit Cam can still play. He just can't play 80% of the snaps anymore on every single down like he has been. He's not that player anymore. If you pick and choose when you use him, and I'm not saying specialized pass rusher only, because he's still a hell of a run defense. If you can pick and choose when you use him, he is still a very effective player. I fully agree with you.
Yeah, he has. He takes care of himself. He is in remarkable condition, and he's a very smart defensive lineman. What he can't do physically anymore, he can do with intelligence. He knows how to dip. He knows how to get an offensive lineman guessing at his next move and then take advantage of it. So, he's not the explosive player he used to be, but he's still a productive player. Just you have to limit his touches. You just have to limit his snaps. And I think him being in 40 to 60% of the snaps in a defensive game, that's a good blend at his age and for a 17-week season. I think him playing 80, 90 snaps, 90% of the snaps in a game, being out there for 56 to 60 plays, defensive plays every week, that's when he gets worn down. That's when he becomes less effective. So, that's a really good discussion, because Demario is another player, but Demario hasn't had that drop off yet.
No, knock on wood.
I know. It's just he lost some of that explosiveness he had earlier. But he's another smart player. So, that'd be a good topic. So, y'all check out Bayou Blitz tomorrow night, 8 o'clock your time, right?
Or 8 o'clock your time. It'll be 9 p.m. our time, East Coast.
Okay. All right. 8 o'clock Central Time, Central Mountain, 9 o'clock Eastern. They don't say that anymore. You remember that?
No, they don't. Kids, yeah.
They tell you be at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock Central Mountain. That also is the product of me watching. I watch a lot of old TV, old commercials. I get a kick out of them. Old football games. I mean, one night we'll have to have a discussion. This is a Sean discussion. Have a discussion about old commercials on TV and how many old jingles you remember as a kid.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, tonight, let it be Lowenbrow. Yeah. A lot of Lowenbrow commercials. I can tell when the game was around Christmas time, because it would show the Anheuser-Busch commercial with the horse with the sleigh. And you're just playing this Bud's for you, kind of like a Christmas jingle sounding one. I'm like, oh yeah, this is Christmas when I was growing up, man. So it's really nostalgic. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. It's really hard to come up with topics. I think we had some good ones tonight. I'll play with my sound. I'll try not to touch the wire anymore. And we'll see you next time with Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.